In steering clear of such disasters as apostasy and the sin unto death, believers who have come to a spiritual halt in stagnation churches have, however, at least managed to escape the dire situation facing many in the Jerusalem church addressed in the book of Hebrews. Not content with giving up their spiritual advance, these latter were actually regressing in the most subtly dangerous of ways. Dangerous, because aligning themselves with the defunct law was, in effect, denying the efficacy of the cross. Subtle, because the law and the temple rites were their traditional heritage, so as to possess a patina of false legitimacy that has always been difficult for certain believers, especially Jewish believers, to see past. But if a righteous person turns from their righteousness and commits sin and does the same detestable things the wicked person does, will they live? None of the righteous things that person has done will be remembered, because of the unfaithfulness they are guilty of and because of the sins they have committed. They will die. Ezekiel 18:24. This quotation makes the issue crystal clear. Turning from the right way to the wrong way has the most dire of consequences. And abandoning spiritual momentum in progressing forward can easily, all too easily, lead to a swift retreat backwards. You who are trying to be justified by the law have been alienated from Christ. You have fallen away from grace. Galatians 5:4. Falling into a no-growth pattern of stagnation is bad enough, but abandoning even superficial Christian influences and returning to the ways of the world without restraint is worse, just as Scripture affirms, 2 Peter 2:20-22. And that is what the Jerusalem believers were guilty of doing. Re-embracing the law, or Gnosticism as they were doing, was far worse than stagnating in a lukewarm church or denomination today, as it constituted a complete reversal of their spiritual course, backwards instead forwards, more akin today to returning to the Roman Catholics, Mormons, or Jehovah's Witnesses, for example. Although the order of the steps below may vary, and though they may often overlap a great deal, we may describe the process of reversion generally as follows. Boredom and fatigue. For one reason or another, a positive believer may find him or herself feeling stale or dry and become dissatisfied with the good approach he or she had previously adopted. This may happen because of boredom or fatigue with the discipline of praying, of Bible reading, of accessing orthodox Bible teaching, of believing and applying the truth to one's life. Doing the right thing may come to seem stodgy to some, especially if said individual is not taking pains to motivate him or herself to love and enjoy the things that really are the best part in this life. Luke 10:40 and 41. All of us get tired. All of us need to make a habit of encouraging ourselves in the Lord whenever we begin to feel spiritually fatigued for whatever reason. 1 Samuel 30:6. The Bible commands us to rejoice innumerable times. For example, Philippians 4:4. If we fail to keep ourselves oriented to eternity, 1 Corinthians 15:58, looking forward to the resurrection and our reward, Ephesians 1:18, keeping our eyes on the Lord we love in gratitude for what He has done for us, 1 Peter 1:7 and 8, whose fault is that but our own? For those believers for whom spiritual growth is allowed to become humdrum and rote, bereft of joy for the opportunities we have been given, and anticipation of all that is to come for those who persevere, then the hard work involved in growing, progressing, and producing can easily come to seem a burden. Once a believer has fallen into that trap, he or she has made him or herself vulnerable to negative influences. These negative influences can be summarized as two general categories: the attraction of the world and false teaching coming from malevolent sources. And of course the two are often combined. You are running a good race. Who cut in on you to keep you from obeying the truth? Galatians 5:7. The Galatians, as in the quote above, had become weary of doing things in the right way in spite of the fact that they were the recipients of many miraculous spiritual gifts, Galatians 3:2-5, a fact which beautifully illustrates the greater power of the Word relative to dramatic human experiences, even when they are unquestionably coming from God. This is a phenomenon anyone tempted to dabble in false charismatic teachings and behaviors ought to consider carefully. As a result of their spiritual fatigue, the Galatians were ripe for the picking, when, in Paul's absence, some teachers of the law arrived and told them, among other things, that circumcision was required for salvation. Rituals are very attractive to certain individuals, and their appeal does much to explain the success of, for example, the Roman Catholic Church. But the only rituals which are valid in this life are the ones actually ordained by God Himself, and the law has now been set aside and replaced by the cross of Jesus Christ, so that communion, the ceremony of remembering Him, is the only valid ritual remaining. You foolish Galatians! Who has bewitched you? Before your very eyes, Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed as crucified. Galatians 3:1. Rituals give people something to do, and for those inclined towards work salvation, something to feel proud of, doing things for God. God has plenty He wants us to do, as we continually affirm, but we do not have the right to dictate to Him what it is that He should accept from us, any more than Cain did. For those more inclined to self-indulgent libertinism than works asceticism, this world is filled to the brim with all manner of entertainments, ranging from the seemingly innocuous to the undoubtedly and intensely satanic. What they all have in common is that they can easily become idols in the hearts of those who turn away from the right path out of desire to have some fun. Ezekiel 14:3 and 4, Ephesians 5:5, and Colossians 3:5. Understand, having fun is not necessarily sinful. Abandoning spiritual growth for a life dedicated to whatever one finds enjoyable instead, the impossible pursuit of happiness, when all such happiness is only myth happiness, apart from the Lord, however, is the first step on the road to perdition. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, that is, slacking off spiritually, and spiritual poverty will come on you like a thief and spiritual scarcity like an armed man. Proverbs 6:10 and 11. Whether manifesting themselves either through chasing after the things of this world or giving attention to false teaching, which is more fun on account of the rituals of legalism or the false miracles and hyper-emotionalism of the charismatics, for example, allowing fatigue and boredom to metastasize in these ways is in essence pure spiritual laziness, at least at first before the heart of said believer has completely turned. The very charge that Paul has leveled at the Hebrew believers. In our context, Hebrews 5:11. Stagnation and inertia. Through laziness, the rafters sag. Because of idle hands, the house leaks. Ecclesiastes 10:18. The Christian life is a long road and a long fight. It is not uncommon for believers to occasionally become tired and to slack off from their good approach, as mentioned previously. This is not unusual in any of life's activities. In fact, it is most unusual for such brief periods of laziness not to happen periodically, Hebrews 5:11. However, as in all things, if a person is not good at disciplining him or herself to snap out of it after a short interval, stagnation will follow and inertia will set in. That is true of all good things, as in the passage above, and it is certainly true of spiritual growth. Just as in home repair, where if nothing is done, eventually the roof will leak, so also in spiritual terms, if a believer stops growing and gives him or herself over to complacency, momentum will ebb away entirely soon enough. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. Psalm 51:12. Sometimes the consequences of failing to pull out of spiritual torpor and allowing a few days of slacking to turn into a lengthy pattern is sinful in and of itself, as it was for David in the context of Psalm 51. That psalm was written in the wake of his disastrous liaison with Bathsheba and ensuing murder of Uriah, a series of events that followed close on the heels of David's unaccustomed dalliance in the palace at Jerusalem while the army was on campaign. The wake-up call that David received was severe, and it is incumbent upon us all to answer any and all such unmistakable signals from the Lord if, when we are guilty of letting our guard down and letting up on our spiritual growth, we are called to account by the Lord for it, and the sooner we respond, the better.